Dan, the Bears are 2-1, and I picked them to win 4 total games. So no one's more surprised at their standing right now than I am. He's Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune. I'm Dionne Miller from ABC7. Are you surprised where this Bears team is at right now?
No, but they have an opportunity on Sunday to go to 3-1 against the New York Giants team that's also 2-1 and surprised to be there. And so there's a lot that is going on here in the early season that allows the Bears to build some confidence and some momentum. They're starting a stretch of 4 road games and 5 games here in the month of October. They're going to have to be very sharp to keep things going. But even if they only won 2 of these 5 games in October, they're still 4-4 headed to the midpoint of the season. And that feels pretty good for an organization that understands its place in the pecking order here. Look, there's a lot that needs to be worked on. You're aware of that. I'm aware of that. The quarterback is number 1 on that list. But hey, to be able to win while you're growing is certainly a nice plus for this team.
That's what I was going to say. It would feel amazing considering the lack of passing game that they have and the struggles that Justin Fields continues to have. It doesn't seem to be getting better, Dan. And that is a point of concern for not only the fan base, but should be inside Hallis Hall as well.
Here's the good news, and I'm bringing sunshine here today on this Friday of
you
week
always
4.
Bring sunshine, Dan.
The Bears are leading the NFC in rushing, right? And so when you can have a passing attack that's struggling as dramatically as the Bears passing attack is struggling, at least you have something that you can lean on. And the Bears have shown that they've established an identity, and I think you heard in Luke Getsy's voice on Thursday afternoon that he's proud of the way they took on the challenge to put on video what they want to play like. And what they want to play like is establishing a menacing ground attack, which they've done. Again, an NFC best rushing average right now per game. And so now you have to complement that with balance in your passing attack, with growth from your young quarterback. And that's the next step for them. Obviously, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The most damning stat that I dug up this week was that the Bears have had 32 possessions in 3 games this season, and they've only had 4 where they've completed multiple passes. I mean, that's jarring to consider that in the 2022 version of the NFL, that 1 out of every 8 possessions includes 2 completed passes.
Justin Fields at the bottom of every possible statistical category when it comes to starting quarterbacks in the league right now. So, I mean, I'm no expert, but let's run the ball against a Giants team that is showing that they will allow that to happen.
No doubt. And lean on that until you can't lean on it any longer. The Giants also a very strong rushing team. Saquon Barkley leading the league in rushing, leading the league in rushing average, and then leading the league in yards from scrimmage. And so the Bears have to start their defensive approach there. But offensively, you want to control the clock. You want to be able to ground out yards on the ground. And then hopefully at some point, the play action game will pop, right? It's not that there haven't been opportunities there for Justin in the passing attack. It's that they just haven't hit on them. And so eventually you've got to hit on a couple of these. You've got to have a drive where the passing attack is your engine and you go down and you score points. And they've got to get that unlocked here. We're turning the calendar into October, and we cannot be talking about this when we get to Halloween at the end of the month, that their passing attack is still constipated and unreliable and unable to do much of anything.
What a terrible description. Please let that never come out of your mouth again. But you're right. I mean, if nothing else, for the confidence for Justin Fields to feel like he also is figuring it out and connecting with his receivers. You heard Darnell Mooney this week, like they're putting in extra work. He expected to be this explosive playmaker for them, and that's just not happening. So hopefully they can get some things going in the right direction. Now, on the other side of things, you mentioned Saquon Barkley, obviously incredible back, but Roquan Smith tied for the league lead with tackles right now, doesn't have like a full sack on his resume at this point, but this feels like a week where he can not only make a difference defensively, but also kind of help put pressure on the quarterback.
Well, listen, 2 former Bears were named NFC Players of the Week last week, with Pat O'Donnell and Cordero Patterson getting those honors. But I think Khalil Herbert and Roquan Smith were overlooked for those honors because both of those guys played tremendously in the game against the Texans, and Roquan was obviously a difference maker, right? It's not just the interception that set up the game-winning field goal. It's the 16 total tackles. It's the 2 of them that were for loss with the Texans on the doorstep of the goal line going in for touchdowns that Roquan helped turn one into a field goal, and the other one I think eventually became the interception that Eddie Jackson had in the end zone. And so you have a guy that is capable of making these time-turning plays. He's playing with a nasty energy right now, right? And that's what the Bears want out of Roquan Smith. If he's got to channel the frustration about his contract situation into play on Sundays, then so be it, right? Unleash that anger on every single offensive opponent we play. this weekend unleash it on Saquon Barkley, who the Bears have seen every single year since Saquon got in the league. It's been a little bit of a scheduling quirk with the Giants and the Bears running into each other as often as they have, but they know who Saquon is, right? And certainly the guys who have been here, Eddie Jackson, Roquan Smith among them, know that you have to get multiple bodies to that guy and get him on the ground, because he can make one jump cut, he can break a tackle, he can do so many different things that just absolutely give you nightmares at the end of the day. And so they've got to be very aware that Saquon is the engine of that offense, and it's got to start with him.
Overreaction that people are having nightmares about Justin Fields and already thinking maybe he isn't going to be the guy?
It depends on how far you take your worry, right? Like we have started a meter on the Take the North podcast that our needle is currently at concerned, and it's moving towards worried. And one step below worried is panicked, right? And we're going in the wrong direction, right? We got to get that needle toward fine and encouraged and excited and eventually euphoric, right? And Justin's got to have a performance, right? It can't just be one play every 3 weeks where you say, oh, that was cool. It's got to be a performance where you leave the stadium and say, that's what it looks like. That's what a QB1 that is a championship quality quarterback looks like. And he hasn't had that performance in a long time. So the worry is totally justified. The rush to turn that into a verdict on what he can be long-term, that's a little bit of an overreaction, I think. I think we're 3 games in to year 2 with a new staff, with new playmakers, with new systems and a new offensive line around him. So we got to give the patience that is required for this, but certainly Justin has to meet his end of the bargain and produce, right? There has to be production. You have to reach double digits in completions at some point, right? Yeah. You have to be able to surpass 300 yards passing, not just in a month, but in a game at some point. Right? And so these types of things need to happen, right?
Correct. I mean, you heard Luke Getsy. What did he say? He's essentially a rookie again, which at first
I didn't love that. I didn't love that.
I did not love that he said that. No, I feel like they want to have patience, but they insist almost too much that they trust him, because what we're seeing on the field isn't that they trust his arm or they trust his ability to shake off the bad and move towards the good.
Well, listen, and when you only have 23 completions and you also have 4 interceptions, that's a bad deal, right? And the 2 interceptions on Sunday against the Texans were troubling in different ways. And you can't just come in 3 days later and say, oh, yeah, that one ball slipped off my hands. Okay, well, don't let it slip off your hands, right? It's not a valid excuse for throwing an interception to a first read wide open receiver. And so Justin's just got to make progress in these regards. He's got to hit some of these big plays, and he's got to earn the trust of the coaching staff. I don't know, what the pie chart looks like in terms of how much they don't trust Justin, how much they don't trust their protection, how much they don't trust a receiving core that's depleted, right, and was underwhelming to begin with when they were even at full strength. And so they've got to find answers, and it's up to Luke Getsy and the coaching staff to find those answers. Hopefully they can find a couple on Sunday in New York and get some of this unlocked to where these conversations change. I think you'd agree with me that Justin came in to his weekly news conference on Wednesday and was a little surly, was a little frustrated, was a little slumped in his chair. And part of the reason is because we just keep asking him about all the bad because there's not enough good to ask him about, right? Like, it would be really nice to be, hey, Justin, can you walk us through your 3rd touchdown pass of the day, right? Like the conversation would change dramatically if those were the types of things that we had to talk about. And so they've got to find a way to produce those.
The criticism is warranted. I think the overall judgment and saying and writing him off, I think that's a gross overreaction at this point. You mentioned briefly about Khalil Herbert, but to hear Luke Getsy say we didn't even blink when David Montgomery went down and we just picked up, and Khalil has that cool patience and vision about him. I was impressed, Dan.
You should have been, right? Like, this is a guy who's taking advantage of his opportunities. We saw him take advantage of his opportunity last year when David Montgomery got hurt around a similar time of the season, and Khalil Herbert showed you who he was. And so, listen, to be taking advantage of the holes that are there for him, to be running with the sort of power and purpose and vision that's there, really impressive stuff. And it also gives you the luxury now of taking your time with David Montgomery, right? Like, David's going to work his butt off to try to get back on the field as soon as possible. But the Bears can say, hey, give it another week. We're good. Khalil's got us for now, and you don't have to overexert yourself or put yourself in jeopardy to get back, because we know our running game can still hum without you.
Let's shift defensively. Let's shift defensively for a minute. No Jalen Johnson again this week at practice. Obviously, that challenges things for the secondary. How do you feel like some of these young guys have done through this last game, I guess?
Look, we've got to see more growth from Kyler Gordon. We've got to see the fact that he is a guy that can be a playmaker on game days. I think the Bears are okay living with the growing pains and understanding that this is valuable experience for Kyler, that hopefully if he's mentally strong enough and wired the way they think he is, that he will ultimately look back on some of the struggles he has as a rookie and say, that was a tremendous experience for me to overcome and to clear some hurdles in that regard. So Matt Eberflus has shown from the get-go that with some of these young building blocks that he wants to get them the experience through thick and thin, right? And not panic and take things off a guy's plate just because he has a few bad plays. Jalen Jones, I thought, played pretty well without Jalen Johnson on the field. But you're thrust into a starting role, and you're thrust into an opportunity that allows you to earn some trust from the coaching staff. And I think he did enough to earn that coaching staff. Now you just got to figure out a way to continue to play well, right? And Kindle Vildor breaking that pass up in the end zone and getting Eddie Jackson his second interception of the season is a big deal, right? In a lot of different ways, because now you feel like Eddie's got, the monkey came off his back when he got that first interception. Now it's not even a conversation anymore. It's like, okay, now I'm back in my groove. Now I can go for interception number 3, number 4, number 5, right? Like, you're not trying to break a slump anymore. You're just playing free. And Eddie was, I thought, very emphatic after the game on Sunday and saying, look, like, that interception came because the pass was deflected right to me, but it's also not made if I'm not expecting that pass to get broken up and I'm not hustling and playing with intensity and getting to the ball. And so that's where you see this payoff of the hustle and the intensity, 2 principles, HI of the HITS principle, that pay off in a game. And then all of a sudden you see the results and you say, okay, this stuff is working.
No doubt. And I would say body language wise, demeanor wise, Eddie Jackson among those who have shifted completely from a year ago, and it's been a welcome change. Okay, so when's the last time the Bears were favored on the road? I mean, this is truly a golden opportunity, as you mentioned. Do you think they pull it off?
So I have picked them. I've picked them to win 23-19, and some of this is just looking kind of in a mirror at what the Giants look like, right? They've got a reliable running game. They've got a quarterback who isn't all that protected behind the offensive line. They've got a receiving core that's entirely depleted and doesn't have a lot of game-breaking options there. They've got a defense that'll challenge you in certain ways, but I think the Bears have enough here, and I think Matt Eberflus has just talked a lot about the mental toughness, right, and the stamina and focus of this team to be able to dig out close games in the fourth quarter. They showed that against the Texans for sure. I think they can show it again in New York. And again, if you get on that plane Sunday night and you're 3-1, feel-good vibes are very meaningful for this organization.
Even if it looks ugly, I will take it. He's Dan. I'm Dionne. We'll see you next time.